Shayla, welcome to the Rain or Shine podcast. I'm so excited to sit down with you today. Normally, when you and I chat, it's very business oriented, task oriented, but today we get to know the human behind Better Than a Bot. And so we're going to dig into your origin story, how you became a personal assistant, kind of some of your secrets for running a business and building a career outside of the typical corporate life. And yeah, we're going to go all over the place today. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with some rapid fire because I know this is one of the first podcasts you're ever recording. So I like to just warm my guests up. So, first off, what is your favorite way to decompress after you've had a really busy week as an entrepreneur?
Honestly, I think it's probably taking a nap. I kind of carve out time every week to have a really solid nap, and it's pretty life-changing.
I love that so much because I feel like for a lot of people, like naps just happen in the in-betweens, but only an entrepreneur would be like, I like to schedule a weekly nap and like try to make it happen on the regular.
For sure. And when I was young, I used to be like, oh, I have to have a nap. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to have a nap. I'm so excited. So,
It's the best. I know. I have a 2.5-year-old that's resisting naps. I'm like, what do you mean you don't want a nap? Like, I want a nap at 37 years old. What is one thing you do every single day that is non-negotiable for your routine?
family time for sure. Every evening, my husband, my daughter, and I, we do something together. So whether that's watching a show, we do coloring, we do puzzles, we go for a walk, whatever it looks like that day, it's just very important that that time happens every single day.
Mm. And I feel like that's just another good tip too. It's like we could just do family time in the in-betweens or like by default almost, but I love that you're saying that's like a conscious choice of like we do
Mhm.
an activity in the evenings all together and you're not just leaving it up to like, well, it'll happen when we have time. So, yeah, again, goes back to your expertise in time management. So, this is all tracking. What is the most unexpected or unusual, or have you had any weird jobs growing up?
Yeah, my first job was at Colonel's Popcorn, so that was quite an interesting job. I popped popcorn, I did cashier work, and I always smelled like popcorn. Like
Oh,
no matter how much I like showered and stuff, I smelled like popcorn for like a year, which was really funny.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, I did a lot of cashier jobs. Always really loved cashiers and like, pressing buttons and scanning things. I just think it's so much fun. So I worked at Safeway for a little bit. I had a dollar store job, and then Colonel's Popcorn was like my first pretty big gig. So.
So funny. I always am a big believer that we learn something from every job. When you look back at your role at Colonel's, is there one thing, like a skill or a life lesson that you learned while working there?
Just to smile and, be friendly. People will come to your booth and come buy stuff if they see a friendly face. So I think, sometimes you don't realize that maybe you have a grumpy face and maybe you don't even mean to have a grumpy face. So just having that smile, making people feel warm and welcome, that was something I learned very early on in my working days.
So important. I was actually just chatting with a hiring manager for a local public services organization, and he said to me, one of the things we look for in an interview candidate is that they're smiling when they talk. Because if you look miserable the whole time or like you're just rehearsing an AI script, he's like, we can't connect to you. But if you're lit up, you're happy, you're like, and then this one time I took initiative doing this, and you're smiling. He said that actually makes a difference in whether they'll move people on or even just like feel the right energy for culture fit. And I was like, wow, something so simple as smiling when you talk. It's just a good reminder.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to know, you're a personal assistant, you live in Calgary. What drew you to becoming a personal assistant? How did you get into this path?
That's a great question. I think, I've always served people in my career. I worked in oil and gas for 15 years, and I started off as a front desk receptionist, greeting people, keeping the office really nice. And then I kind of moved into more administrative roles. Towards the end, I was helping out more with HR. And I think I've always just really enjoyed helping people, making people's lives easier. And so I think just when I decided to leave the corporate world and start my own business, I still wanted to really help people, but I wanted to help people in a way that freed up their time because, a lot of the work I did in corporate was helping people during the day. But I thought, if I take these skills and I help people in the evenings, like I would work during the day, but I would give them time back in their evenings and weekends and stuff. that that would be a great thing to do. And so I kind of just had this idea that I'll, take all the skills that I've learned and start my own thing and serve people, help people, make people's lives easier. And I think it just came naturally because it's something that I had done for so long, but I just kind of wanted to branch out and do it on my own.
It, for me, like the job that you have as a personal assistant is very um like I want it. Like I think it's so cool and I love the idea that every client is different and you get to help people and you're kind of jumping into various tasks. So let's paint a picture. Like what does a personal assistant do day to day? Walk us through like either a day in the life or a week in the life because I feel like a lot of people are kind of intrigued by this career and are almost leaning in, going, okay, but what do you actually do?
For sure, yes. And I think there's a lot of confusion around a personal assistant. I think a lot of people, when they hear that term, they think it's somebody who supports them in their business, which there are assistants that do that. But what I do is I really get in and I help people with personal tasks. So I meet with my clients bi-weekly and we kind of go through what's coming down the pipe. They give me a list of personal tasks. So that could be anything from booking appointments to managing their calendar to getting quotes for like home improvement projects. Maybe there's a birthday coming up, they don't have time to shop for the gift. Maybe their garage is full of a bunch of donations and they want me to go pick them up and drop them off. All sorts of miscellaneous errands and tasks. Some clients ask me to drive their elderly parents to appointments, just making sure they get there safely. So really, it's just things that people need to do outside of work that take up a lot of time. And when they're working, a lot of my clients are working a lot. They have very high profession, and so when they're not working, they want to be with their children and their families and doing the things that matter most to them. And so I kind of come in and I take away all of those little but time-consuming tasks, so that they can do the things they want to do when they're not working in their careers. And no day is ever the same. Every day is very different. Some days I'm working a lot with clients like this. Some days I'm in person doing stuff with clients. Other days I'm working from home, like booking the appointments and doing all the back end stuff. So it's a very fun job because no days are the same. And I'm serving people in all different sorts of ways. And the work I do is very customizable. So, what works for one client might not be what the other client wants. And that's what I love about my work is I'm able to offer so many different things.
Hmm. You mentioned that a lot of people are confused or just not really sure or certain what a PA can do for them. And I also think, in addition to not knowing how helpful this could be in someone's life, they might feel almost like a little bit of resistance, I want to say, of like, well, that's reserved for the elite, or I don't need help. But from your perspective, what do you see as some of the biggest blocks or reasons why people don't hire a PA or don't even realize this service exists? Like, what are the blocks that we walk around with every day that lead us to not have help?
I think it's three things. The first thing is people not really understanding and knowing that this service is available. Personally, I think that, some people know what it is, but a lot of people really have never heard of this, or they think that only the elite, like you said, have this kind of position. Only people that are very, very high up that make a certain amount of money can afford a service like this, which is also not true. I find a lot of people who are just kind of building their career and, they have good jobs, obviously, but they're just kind of getting started. That's when they really need the help because they usually have small children at home and they're building their careers and life is just so busy. So, I think there's a lot of stigma around that, around people thinking that, only certain people can have a PA. And like I said, other people not even knowing what it is.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it's just sort of a combination of, and there's some clients that are very, ashamed and embarrassed of their situation, like how behind they are on things or how messy their email is or whatever that looks like. And they're like, oh gosh, I don't know if I should ask for help. This is so embarrassing. So I do think there's also a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment with some people, which is something that I work with my clients on because we all have things in life that, we're not all up to date on, and there's nothing to be, ashamed of. That's why there's help. That's why there's people like me who do what I do to get you out of that situation so that you can be caught up and feel less stressed and have more time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so funny because I think there are just like stories that we tell ourselves, like, I have to do it all, or, I don't make enough money to invest in support, or I'll just figure this out and white knuckle my way. But sometimes when we hire out these services and realize that it actually frees up bandwidth to make more money in your business or go do the things you love or become a healthier, happier person so that you can pour into your family, you realize that this is not necessarily an expense. It can actually be seen as an investment in you, in your family, in your sanity, right? Can save you from burnout, which I know is a topic that you think a lot about and help your clients with. Because, like, if you burn out and you can't work, then, like, that's devastating. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's really thinking about this is not just reserved for people who make X amount of money. This is something that, as an investment, can actually serve the future of, the betterment of your life, which I think is really cool. When you sit down with someone who's like, okay, I think I need to hire a personal assistant, I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, how do you figure out what they should outsource to you first? Because if you asked me like to give you a list of all the things that maybe I don't want to do anymore, perhaps it's really, really long, but how do I know what to pass off to a PA to begin with?
So that's a really great question. I think for me, I have a system in my business where when I start with a client, we start on a 3-month trial. So this 3-month trial gives us time, number one, to get to know each other, make sure we're a good fit, make sure we like each other. But also it gives me time to really see the person. I can figure out based on our biweekly meetings and our check-in points kind of, where they're struggling, where they're having a hard time. A lot of the time, right away, they have a few things that they want to knock off of their list. But I find after we've worked together for a few weeks and a couple of months, I start finding things that I feel that they could use support on. And I just kind of say, like, would you like me to help you with this? A lot of the time they're thrilled. They're like, I didn't even think about that. And other times they're like, I actually don't need help with that, but thank you so much for asking. So I think, you really have to know the person because that is a very open-ended question. Like we all have tasks, we all have to-dos, we all have a list of things that we need to do, but some things we still think that we need to do and other people can't do. But I think once you get to know somebody and you trust them, you feel like, okay, maybe I can pass these extra things off to that person. So it doesn't always happen the day we have the call and the day I start with a client. It's over a 3-month period where we really get to know, like, and trust each other. And that's where I kind of come in and suggest that, I can actually help you with this. I kind of pick out the pain points that I see and I offer my help there.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything like crazy or weird that people have asked you to do, or do you have any like strange stories of things that either you said, okay, sure, I'll do that, like a interesting ask, but yes, or things that you're just like, no, that's not part of my job.
I'm getting a little better at saying no, but I still, if I can help, I want to help. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I had a client ask me to remove a couple of dead bunnies out of her backyard. So I actually had to get my husband to help me with this one because it was just like a little bit too much for me. So we had to actually get them out from underneath her deck and like dispose of them. So that was probably the craziest thing. I had another client want me to move like 65-pound patio furniture by myself up a flight of stairs. Um, so luckily there was a man at the building who I didn't know who this person was at all. And I was like, will you please give me a hand? And I learned after that that I probably shouldn't accept, doing something like that. So just random things. And mostly when I first started, I was learning, right? Like I was just learning about what people were going to ask me, what my boundaries were. And I did do it all, but if somebody asked me to move a 60 or 70-pound piece of furniture now, I would probably say no, but I'm happy to find somebody who can do that for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Kind of like leads into a conversation that I wanted to have with you just around boundaries as a business owner, because I think in like your profession and my profession, people can come to us and almost ask the world of us. And I think it's tempting sometimes to just say yes to it all, but then to also on the other side realize like I'm not good at everything and I created certain packages and frameworks inside of my business for a reason. So I'm curious, from like an entrepreneur perspective, have you ever had to turn down clients, even though they wanted to hire you for a certain service? Or I know a lot of people used to come to you for virtual assistant, or, they're looking for things just outside of your scope. What has been your journey with like saying yes versus saying no, drawing a boundary versus just stretching yourself to do it all and be it all to everybody?
I actually just learned this lesson within the last 2 months. A lady found me. I was on Global News. I was featured on Global News, and she found me on there. We had a discovery call, Wonderful Person, and she needed help with like a scanning and filing project. And I didn't quite understand the scope. And I was just thinking, oh, she wants me to do a bunch of scanning and filing. I can totally do that. And so I accepted the work without fully understanding what it is that she had wanted. And then I kind of got the boxes and I started going through everything and I realized, oh gosh, this is like way more than I had anticipated. And so I had to make the tough decision to, refund the project and cancel it and have that conversation with the client. And as much as, I was not happy about that, it was a huge learning curve for me to really understand what people are asking me for, make sure it's something that I'm able to do and want to do, and not say yes if I don't, if it doesn't align with what I'm trying to do. And so luckily all of that turned out really well. But it was a huge learning lesson for me in my business to really understand and, decide, is this something I want to do? Is this a right fit? Because if it's not fair to me or to that client. So
Hmm.
I've definitely learned that lesson and I will not take anything on in the future unless it's, aligned with what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it's so hard because I feel like as business owners, we want to say yes. And when opportunities are there, we're like, yeah, okay, I'll make this work. But you're right. Sometimes we can say yes, even though we knew in our hearts this might not be the right fit for me. And there's probably someone better who could do this. But there's part of us that's like, oh, I just want to bend over backwards and help. And I think it's very relatable. And a lot of us learn this the hard way by saying yes to the wrong things that it's okay to stay in your lane. It is okay to know what you're good at and protect that boundary so that you can show up for the clients who really need your services. Because one client who's asking you to do things outside of your scope can actually derail you from being able to show up for everybody else.
Yeah, I learned that.
So you have a philosophy in life or in your business around punching the monkey. So I have to ask, what is punch the monkey? Where did it come from? What can we learn from this?
So Punch the monkey, he is a monkey in Japan, and his mom actually abandoned him as a baby. And so he was in a zoo in Japan with a bunch of other monkeys as well as his mother, and they all started kind of picking on him and they wouldn't accept him. This is all a very recent story, like in the last 6 months. And so the zookeeper got him this plush monkey that he carried around like everywhere. Like it was his friend and he slept with it, and like it was the one thing that brought him comfort because he was an abandoned tiny little monkey. And, he just tried so hard to fit in with everybody else. And I think now things have gotten better for him, thankfully. But he was like all over Instagram
Oh
and,
my
the
God.
internet. He was like a famous monkey. I was following his story every single day. I even got my daughter the plush monkey from IKEA, which was sold out. It was so hard to get because it became like viral. And I think it's just a good lesson, like he didn't have the greatest luck from when he was born and from the beginning, but now he's, fitting in with the tribe and, he stayed true to himself. He had this little stuffy that kind of got him through the tough times and he didn't give up. And now he's like thriving in a zoo in Japan and he's famous and people from all over the world go and visit him. And I just thought it was so heartwarming and so sweet. And I don't know. It really touched me. I loved watching all of the videos of him and seeing him progress and seeing him do better. And yeah, it was really cute.
Do you draw parallels from Punch the Monkey to your entrepreneurial journey? Like, things are going to be hard. You're going to have to push through the challenging times. You might feel lonely. You might not know which direction life is going. Is that kind of the parallel?
Yeah, I think so. Just, it being tough at the beginning and things slowly getting easier and just, not giving up. Like he could have gave up and like, stopped eating or doing whatever, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't. He just, even though every single monkey was so bad to him, he still showed up every day and, he had this little friend that he carried around and he just, kept going and now he's doing amazing. So
I
it is
love
kind of
that.
the same, it's not easy when you first start, but things get better and things get easier and you just have to keep going.
So cute. Let's actually dive into that from an entrepreneurial perspective, because I know at every stage of business, there are challenges, there are hard days, days we want to throw in the towel. Um, I'm curious, can you kind of describe how you move through, whether it's a challenging day, a challenging season of business? How do you keep yourself from just saying, screw it, I'm done, I'm going back to corporate? Because that is sometimes our default mindset to just give up, go back to safety net. But then, we often remind ourselves to keep choosing this dream, this vision that we're building. So, yeah, how do you navigate the hard times, the challenging times, and keep putting one foot in front of the other?
I think my daughter is a big reason for that. She's 14, so she's watching what I do pretty closely. I started this business. A huge reason was because of her. I missed out a lot when she was little, working in corporate, not being able to go to certain things or having to get permission, and sometimes it didn't work out. And so when I finally did start my business, she was 9 years old, almost 10. And I started being able to control my calendar. And if she had an award show at school or a swim thing or whatever, I was able to go. I didn't have to ask anybody. And so I think just having her little eyes watching me and seeing what I'm doing, I want her to have the same kind of experience in life. I want her to know that if there's something she really loves doing or something she's passionate about, that she can, even if it's hard, she can do hard things. So I think that's like my biggest reason is just showing up for my daughter so that she can see what I'm doing. And I hope that it inspires her and helps her make these decisions when she's older. And also, I've worked really hard for this business. I've poured my whole heart into this business and I love what I do. I love my clients and the thought of, not doing that anymore and going back to my old life just isn't even an option. So when things are hard, I just need to figure it out because this is so much more in alignment with my life and who I am that I can't even imagine going back to what I did before.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something about having a child, no matter what age they are, watching you and you thinking, like, I want them to see me persevere versus give up on my dreams. That is just very motivating, I think. And yeah, and then also that kind of desire to just be there for them and to not have to have your time controlled by somebody else, which is I think a real challenge for a lot of moms, having to ask permission, missing out on things. And that's such a big motivator for starting businesses as women and as mothers and caregivers is to be able to just have that little bit more flexibility. And I know a lot of people say the word freedom, and I'm always like, is it complete freedom? I don't think so. But a little bit more than when you have a 9 to 5 or like a typical structure where you are really much, very much bound by the clock and the 5-day work week.
Mhm.
I'm curious, what is one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you started your business in order to make this journey of the first 5 years a little bit easier?
I think delegate. I tried to do all the things by myself for the first little while because I was just starting a business. But I think if I would have had somebody being like, you know what, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get somebody to help you with this. I think it would have probably helped me move along a little bit quicker. Because now I do ask for help. I work with different people who help me in my business, and it's taken me so much further. And same with my personal life, like I can't do everything on my own. I have to delegate and ask for help with certain things. So I think that would be the biggest thing is instead of being so afraid and putting myself in a little box because I just started and I only have this and I only have that, it would be like taking a bit of a chance and a bit of a leap and, outsourcing some things to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit quicker.
Yeah, yeah, and just like honing in on your zone of genius versus trying to wear every hat and try to get good at everything, which is
Exactly.
oftentimes just not reasonable.
Mhm.
I love it. In thinking about your business, you work with a few clients and they hire you for X number of hours per week. And kind of similar to a high ticket business where you're helping maybe like 5 to 10 clients at any given time. And these are like bigger contracts. There are a lot of our listeners who have similar business models. So they're working with a small handful of clients, bigger packages. What is one thing you have found to be really helpful in landing new clients? Like when you look back at the trajectory of how you have met and had people trust you enough to pay you hundreds or thousands of dollars a month to work with them, what is one success secret or one, marketing channel or strategy or even just characteristic that you feel has helped you to build trust enough that somebody would want to hire you for your services?
Well, number one, I think word of mouth. I think a lot of my clients tell their people about me. So that's been like huge. I think because they trust me, they know me. So they're telling their people about me.
Yep.
If we're not going to go that route, I think probably LinkedIn has been a really great source for my business. Just kind of putting myself out there, reaching out to people, getting to know people on that platform, going to some of the events that, are local in Calgary from LinkedIn. That has been huge in my business, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, you're right. Word of mouth is so important. It's like if people like your services and they talk about you, that is sometimes the easiest way to have
Mhm.
other people do your marketing and advertising, which is incredible when it happens. So, Shayla, can you tell us how can people work with you? Where can they find you? If they don't live in Calgary, can they still reach out to you? Give us the whole breakdown of how we can support Better Than a Bot.
Sure. So I would suggest everybody go to my website, so www.betterthanabot.ca. I have a bunch of pages on there. You can learn about me, about my services. If you want to chat, you can book a free discovery call right from my website. I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So if you don't want to book a call and you just want to check me out online, you can check out those platforms. And yes, I live in Calgary, so I serve clients in Calgary and surrounding areas. But of course, if you're not in Calgary, I'd still love to meet you and chat with you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Well, what you do is so valuable. I cannot recommend your services enough, just in the sense that even in my own journey over the last few years, becoming a mom and having a business for the last decade, I have never needed more help in my life. And so it's services like yours. I realize that in busy seasons, we don't need to feel guilt. We don't need to feel shame. We don't need to feel embarrassed reaching out and asking people to support us or asking them to do what they're so good at so that we can stay doing what we're good at. So, yeah, I cannot recommend people reaching out to you enough. So, thank you so much for sharing your story, your success tips, and we wish you all of the best.
Thank you, Kelsey.